Great. So, well, welcome everybody again to this webinar on experimentation frameworks for testing innovation. Today, we are bringing together 3 European Union funded sister projects, the FINEX on clean tech, Evolve to Care in healthcare, and APROVALS in biotech, to discuss how frameworks like testbeds, living labs, and regulatory sandboxes help test innovations before they reach market. Looking forward to a great conversation here, but first, let's introduce ourselves, the speakers. I'm happy to start. So I'm David Vigorra. I'm a consultant at Cleantech Group. Cleantech Group is the Human Intelligence Authority on global cleantech innovation. And since 2002, we've helped leaders across industry, finance, and policy navigate the shifts transforming the global economy through our membership, which combines market intelligence, policy, and advocacy support, and also through bespoke projects in innovation advisory, technology landscaping, and ecosystem building, like the one that we are presenting here as part of the FINEX consortia. Who wants to go next? I know that we might have an extra speaker, Anastasia, so maybe Anastasia can go next, and then Despina and Alexis.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I work with Despina in the rest of the consortium in the Evolve to Care project. I'm a research associate in the Lab of Medical Physics and Digital Innovation. And we are very happy that we are here today so that we can also explore some of the common activities that we can all have. So, Despina, I will pass the word over to you.
Thank you, Anastasia. I'm also from the Medical Physics and Digital Innovation Lab of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, who is the coordinator of the Evolve to Care project. And IMedFist is the largest university, the largest lab in the university in terms of academic funding and people working in research projects. And our domain of expertise is assistive technologies, living labs, applied neuroscience, medical education technology, medical imaging, just to mention a few. So we are a very diverse group of over 80 people working in this domain. Thank you. So the floor to Alexis.
Hello, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here today. So I'm Alexis Bitton. I'm in charge of international affairs for Genopole. Genopole, we are a biocluster. We represent based in France, in southern France, southern Paris. I'm sorry. So we are coordinator also of the project APROVALS on cell agriculture, and we are really pleased to be here to share our methods, our sandbox, and how we can complement also your own methodology. And I think it's quite great to kind of confront what we have been working on in those different projects.
Thank you all, and great to have you all here. Maybe we can get started with the actual content, but before that, about the agenda. So the idea for the webinar today is to start with project introductions for the 3 sister projects. So starting FINEX, then Evolve to Care and APROVALS. Then briefly mention what are these experimentation spaces that we are talking about, what types there are, and key design elements that we have identified. And from there, we would be moving on the experience that we had from FINEX on testbeds, and then some of the learnings from Evolve to Care in living labs and APROVALS on sandboxes to try and build a complete picture of the different angles that we have observed on testing innovation. So getting straight into it, about FINEX. FINEX is a 2-year Horizon Europe project. It started in September 2024, and it's focused on accelerating the development of clean tech solutions. And when we talk about clean tech, we mean technologies helping us move to a more sustainable economy in topics like energy, mobility, circular economy, or smart cities. And these are essential for the green transition. But what tends to happen is that promising innovations often struggle to move from the lab to real world deployment. And that's exactly what FINEX is trying to address. The project brings together 6 innovation ecosystems, the one that you see in the slide. and also some leading partners like 28 Digital, HEC Paris, and Cleantech Group ourselves. And the goal is isn't just to support individual innovators, but also to strengthen the whole ecosystem around them, including researchers, startups, companies, policymakers, and investors, and building stronger connections. So sharing knowledge across these countries and helping innovators access the right experimentation spaces to test, validate, and scale their solutions. And how are we doing this? We used a 4-step methodology, starting by understanding each ecosystem needs. So we did a series of policy workshops with industry, academia, innovators, and municipalities to identify which clean tech priorities, challenges, and barriers we wanted to tackle per region. Then we moved into the second phase, which was on ecosystem mapping. So we looked at existing resources, including innovators, the research facilities, living labs, etc. And what we did was to send a series of questionnaires and gather feedback to understand what were the different capabilities and especially the gaps in each one of these ecosystems. This actually resulted in an experimentation spaces catalog where we pulled together all this information. And then in parallel, we developed a best practices report, compiling the learnings from global leading hubs and discussions that we had with them. Then we move into the third phase, which was already the matchmaking and the pilot implementation. Innovators share with us their technology needs and maturity level, and we connected them with suitable experimentation spaces for the next development stage. And finally, the last phase in which we are currently is the learning from these experiences. So collecting feedback, identifying remaining barriers, technical, financial, or regulatory, and turning this into actual recommendations. And all of that is to end up with delivering some results. And some of these key results are the first one, which is the one holding everything, is the FINEX help desk on top. You can actually scan the QR codes if you are curious about it, which is the entry point for guidance where all the information is put together. Then we also have the best practices report that I mentioned. So compiling many of the best practices and examples that we're going to discuss from FINEX side today. And also the resources catalog, which lists more than 100 test beds, living labs, sandboxes in the 6 ecosystems that we mentioned. And finally, we are now currently on the stage of developing this policy roadmap and recommendations, which most likely will end up also being in the help desk in case you want to take a look afterwards when we have it finished. That's a bit of an overview. Now over to Anastasia for a quick intro on Evolve to Care. So the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you. We are the Evolve to Care project. We are 5 partners from 5 countries, and we have received almost 1 million from EU funding. Our project started on October of 2024, and it will end on September of 2026. If you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So basically, the whole concept of the project is based on transitional care. Transitional care is the safe transfer from one environment to the other, for example, from the hospital to a rehabilitation center and again back home, to ensure that we have a coordinated patient-centered care across all the services. And the goal here is to actually bridge any gaps that might be met when transitioning from one environment to the other. So if you can go to the next slide. So what we wanted to do was to actually bridge innovators and innovation researchers with an experimentation infrastructure that Despina will talk about more later, which is living labs, in order to assist in transitional care. And in order to do that, we have created our project. So next slide, please. Thank you. So in order to do that, we have used a platform called Axelab that is that has been in collaboration with Enol, and in the platform, the innovators and the researchers can upload the projects, and they can be matched with a certified living lab in order for that living lab to provide their services, for example, test their products, validate their ideas, or help them have more standard protocols. And in order to do that, we also provided 10 vouchers of 5,000 euros to external companies. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that we had in total 44 project requests. We received 32 bids, and the matched living labs and companies were 18. And from those, we chose the 10 that passed all the evaluation criteria. Next slide. Thank you. But we also, apart from the experimentation part and the open call process, we also have a KPI framework that is divided onto the use case evaluation, so that we have a set of KPIs for living labs and innovators, so that they can evaluate how, let's say, we can foster even better collaborations between them. And we also have an overall impact assessment for the project that can evaluate tech assessment, financial sustainability, operational efficiency, and regulatory compliance. And by using the QR codes, you can have access both to the framework and also provide any feedback that might be necessary. And lastly, in the next slide, we can see that we also had some training sessions that are available in the Enol Living Labbers Academy, so that you can go there. They were separated between ones that were mostly dedicated for living labs and others that were dedicated for innovators. And we included a lot of relevant stakeholders that provided the input on for the innovators on actual innovations and how they actually work. And for the living labs, it was mostly on the surface design, and both of them are available online so that you can access them anytime. So that was the brief presentation of the project, and thank you very much.
Thank you. We can now move into the approvals. Over to you, Alexis.
Yes, so APROVALS is a European project. We have started in September 2024. We are 8 partners from across Europe, seven different countries, and Genopol is the coordinator. So APROVALS is a project which is targeting 2 types of technologies: the cellular agriculture that we can gather between precision fermentation, distribute between precision fermentation and cellular cultivation. And so this type of technologies are facing significant challenge, specifically a regulatory challenge, but not only. And so you can go to the next slide, please. So the idea was really to be able to address and de-risk those technologies from early stage. So on 3 main families, I will get more into details later on, but let's say that we have to address the regulatory uncertainty that are faced by the startups, the scale-up and the financing, and also, and most above everything, the societal acceptance. And so basically our APROVALS mission is really to provide a governed confidential experimentation space where innovators can de-risk their development and facilitate, also really important, their market entry. Yes, perfect. Thank you, David. So to do that, we initiated what we call a virtual sandbox, which is a virtual space where we can test different type of scenarios and roadmap directly with the companies and with some experts. This virtual sandbox is supported by 2 hubs: a network hub, which will provide the dedicated expertise, and the policy hub, which will be directed to the stakeholders, policymakers, that will help to own those results and to use it to transform it into policy recommendation. So I just want to insist before I go further, it's not a regulatory sandbox. It's before the regulatory sandbox. So the idea is really to set the stage for Europe and the Commission to be able to at least consider the setting of a regulatory sandbox.
Thank you for clarifying and for both introductions. Very interesting, and I think it combines very well with the learnings and experiences that we had as well. Now moving into the actual lessons learned and some real case examples, starting by understanding what really are these experimentation spaces. We understand these experimentation spaces as the controlled but realistic environments where innovators test new technologies before they go to enter the markets. This is especially critical for innovations involving physical infrastructure, hardware like energy, cities, or industrial processes. And the fact that is so important is because testing full scale can be really expensive and risky, and also regulation limited. So that's why we engage these spaces where we try to reduce the uncertainty and help answer questions like, does it work outside the lab? Is it safe? How do users interact with it? What regulatory barriers exist currently? So they also bring actors together, which is another benefit from it, innovators, researchers, companies. And the idea is to create this collaboration instead of developing solutions isolated. And that's exactly also why FINEX was born in our case, to try and help these innovators find the most suitable experimentation spaces. But so what types of experimentation spaces that we have identified? We have grouped them in these three main types, and I know that there are various differences and different grades as well, but that we took it from the European Commission document that you can see reference here in the QR if you want more detail. But basically we have these three main ones: the test beds, which are dedicated environments for technically testing, improving, and scaling technology. So they are focused on the performance. Does it work? How reliable it is? What needs improving are the kind of questions that would try to answer. For the living labs, they aim to bring innovation into real-life environments, so focusing not just on the technology performance, but also on people and society. And I think we're going to have some great examples from what I could hear. And the users can participate and test and shape these solutions. And finally, the regulatory sandboxes, which let innovators test under controlled regulatory conditions or define those conditions or virtually test them, as you were saying, Alexis, with public authorities, especially when regulation hasn't yet caught up with emerging technology. So sometimes we see that technology moves much faster than regulation, and it's a very nice way to test or do a small prototype and then see if this change needs to be permanent in the actual regulation. And together, all of this aim to help innovators in the different stages and for the different needs that they may have to become market ready. And yeah, as I was saying, some more information on the actual QR. And as we've seen, and we will see more, experimentation spaces are these elements that combine many different things, and to try and understand what key design elements make them best practices or are more relevant. What we did when studying them from the FINEX project was to segment these spaces into three main categories: infrastructure and physical resources, so all the physical side of it, spaces, the equipment, the tools, the utilities. Then the layer on top with the programs and services happening within those facilities, so all the technical knowledge, acceleration and vendor support, commercialization, and then everything that's beyond those facilities and those services. So that would be the stakeholder engagement with the broader ecosystem, or even the policy that coordinates all of these moving parts. And with that in mind, I would like to start initially with these learnings from testbeds that we had from the FINEX project. The two key aspects, because we are trying to test here the performance of these solutions, are mostly the infrastructure and physical spaces that we've seen, and also the programs and services. So I'm gonna mostly focus on these two. first of all, understand why these are so important. When it comes to infrastructure and physical spaces that we can see on the top left side of the slide, the reason why it is so important with clean tech is because they are hardware-intensive solutions with development cycles that tend to expand more than those of software. And so they need to be prepared and adapted to these different sort of solutions and needs. One way of doing that for spaces is providing flexibility and customizability. So the idea would be to provide modular design, movable furniture and walls, or a way to reconfigure the spaces. And this we've seen is especially important when there's cross-contamination risks, confidentiality risks that I saw that you were also mentioning, Alexis. And so that's why we realized this was a key element. The second element on equipment and tools, the key aspect or attribute was versatility. And that's because they need equipment that's very expensive and that they cannot own most of the times. So the idea is that experimentation space is provided in some models like a pay-per-use model where the different innovators can access, reducing the capital barrier that they would have otherwise. And then finally, there's materials utilities, which the idea is to have availability, so to have them ready for innovators to use because they tend to work long hours and they need it as soon as possible to try and reduce these development cycles. One example being 24/7 vending machines of key parts or solvents that we've seen in some hubs, and location and amenities, which I think is quite well understood for everyone, but it's basically to provide all the services needed for the workers developing those technologies, which tend to be a long time for those development cycles. Things like affordable canteens, cafes, or even nurseries for entrepreneurial parents that can become really useful. And one standout example that we saw in terms of physical spaces and resources was the Scale Space and the Undaunt Accelerator. The Scale Space is an innovation hub in the Imperial College YCT campus, and it offers startups, research support, lab space, and business services. And Undaunt is an accelerator that's based within. And so what Scale Space does is to run a pay-per-use model for expensive consumables, and this can be protective garments, cutting tools, feedstock, specialized equipment, so that startups only pay for what they use. And it also has a clear pathway on which are depending on the development stage of the innovator, so that they have an adapted space for each one of the different technology readiness levels. And even they went as far as to make a modular building that was designed and planned for shorter horizon. So I think it was about less than 20 years that they were aiming for, and so that they could expand or reassemble the whole building or parts of it if it was needed to adjust to the different evolving needs of the innovators. And this was not against the environmental performance of the building, and that's shown by the certification that they got, which certifies that it's an environmental building in terms of water usage, emissions, and such. Moving on to the right-hand side on programs and services. So basically what we identified is these three types of services. The technical one, this is very important because in clean tech, it tends to combine multidisciplinary fields like mechanics, chemistry, biology, and startup teams do not have so much expertise inside. So they need to rely on mentoring services, on in-house experts, or even third-party partnerships. And I think that's related also to what I saw that you had in some of the slides. So connecting with the resources that they may need at every time. Then there's acceleration and venture support. And this is especially important when the founders are scientists and engineers, which happens very often, that do not have the business skills required and the entrepreneurial skills to develop a startup. And some of the best practices here were providing on-demand structured learning bites and some templates on specific elements like pitch decks or term sheets. And finally, the last one, market access. This is important because, especially in clean tech, at least, customers are often large organizations and very regulated, like utilities, cities, corporates. And the idea is to provide support to these small companies, including procurement connections, corporate-driven innovation challenges, or paid pilots, so that they can bridge this gap. And a good example is the one we see on the bottom right, which is Greentown Labs, a climate tech incubator in the US that provides a network of mentors that commit a few hours a month. And if a founder has a challenge, there's always someone either on staff or on speed dial that can help accelerate this problem solving and preventing mistakes. They also have different elements to provide visibility to the actual innovators, like the investor program, the deal flow digest, or the investor newsletter. And finally, they even provide, to bridge this commercialization aspect, the Greentown Go programs, which are sector-specific programs. So they have Go Build for buildings, Go Energize for power, Go Grow for food, which help innovators build partnerships and commercial relationships with the sponsoring corporates that actually set up these programs. So these are some examples that we've seen, but I'm sure that we may have some more on the living labs and sandboxes. So Evolve to Care, over to you to explain some of the takeaways and learnings.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. So if you can go to the next slide, let's start with the definition, because some might not be very familiar with what living labs are, and we are using the European Network of Living Labs definition that defines living labs as open innovation ecosystems in real-life environments based on systematic user co-creation approach that integrates research and innovation in communities, placing citizens at the center of innovation. So we see here the emphasis, as also David mentioned, on the citizens and how they can be placed in the center of innovation from the very beginning of the process, and using a co-creation approach to engage them. But also is this real life environment and open innovation, so innovation that is coming not only from the organization that will use it, but from the outside as well, and building on this quadruple helix idea. So if you go to next slide. Living labs have been established some years ago also as a result of another project, the Vitalize project, as research and innovation enablers. So living labs do not only focus on this co-creation and this user-centeredness, but they have other capacities also to support research and innovation. So they also use state-of-the-art technology. They provide the facilities for this real-life experimentation. They secure all these ethics and data considerations. They are trying to be open, transparent, and have clear guidelines for accessing in their resources, infrastructures, and data. And an important part of the living labs is also the quality control, which is coming by the European Network of Living Labs that provides a seal of excellence in the living labs that have the adequate quality to be certified as a non-living labs. And this gives also the externals that would like to access the living labs and get their services the reassurance that this will work effectively. So if you go to the next slide. Trying to keep the structure and framework that David has presented about resources and infrastructures. The living lab have diverse facility types, so it can be a single-sided facility, so like a physical location like a lab, a smart home, something like a test bed that has all this equipment. It can be also a distributed facility. So a whole city, a whole area can be a living lab with all the resources that are being able to support this experimentation. It can be virtual access-based facility. So a living lab can give access to resources and services via online platforms and tools to some participants, and also mobile facilities. So we have seen living labs that operate in the places where the people live their everyday life. So taking equipment, for example, from the lab and taking it to the people's houses or to where they exercise so that they can make experiments and co-creation sessions with them. And also we have identified the living lab access types. So how can these resources be accessed by innovators and researchers? And there is the excellence-driven access. So having a living lab inside a consortium and building together a proposal that is based on how well they're doing the work, of course, and submitting together proposals. There is the market-driven access, which Evolve2Care focused a lot on, which is receiving some resources and some services by providing a fee. And this is mainly the demand coming from SMEs or other bigger companies, or wide access, which is the open and broad access, giving materials, resources, data available open to everyone. And this specifically supports the third mission of academia and the broader impact to the citizens that the living labs can have. So I can say that most of the living labs support all these three access types, maybe with the market-driven one being the most new in this area. So if you go to next slide. Here we can see the set of services that living labs are providing, and also how much they were requested by the Evolve2Care open call during these Axel Lab matchmaking sessions that we have done. And if you can go to the next slide, because I would like to focus on some of them. This just to say that our services specifically targeting healthcare innovations. So you can see services like clinical trials which do not apply in other sectors. But we have done a validation study, so all of these services are being validated in other domains as well. So these are cross domain services except the clinical trials. And as you can see, sorry, previous slide. Expert opinion and advisory services were very much requested in two studies that we have done, both in the Evolve2Care and in a previous one that involved researchers. So it's something very important for SMEs and researchers. Participant recruitment as well, but we see also and some differences. So living lab project management was mostly requested by researchers and less requested by companies, which might mean that the researchers want to focus more on research and do not want to deal with these management issues. And also very important is the co-creation, proof of concepts, usability testing. So all these aspects that have to do with users and how they are involved in the innovation access. So next slide. And here we see with percentages the most requested services from innovators in the Evolve2Care project. So we see that mostly SMEs wanted usability testing, and this is coming from 44 cases that were reported. So it's very important, as we see, for innovators to do this usability testing with real users in real life environments. This concept feasibility study, but also co-creation sessions and impact assessment plays a key role as well. And next slide. About stakeholder engagement and policy, and what are the important things that the living labs succeed on, is that they bring all the ecosystem actors to the same table, and they bring them on early enough so that the problems are being shown from the co-creation of the idea, from the idea perception and the proof of concept testing, and not when the innovation is high advanced and the cost of going back is even bigger. So the co-creators, all these actors are coming in the process from earlier stages and not when a product is finished. And this goes also for the policymakers, which are the most difficult to engage, I can say, but it's very important that these ethical and compliance issues are addressed from the beginning so that the innovators, the citizens know what to expect as we move forward. And last but not least, I would like to mention as an engagement and policy development across the Living Lab, the importance of the European Network of Living Lab, which is an organization with more than 600 historically certified Living Labs, currently counting more than 200 active members in 5 continents, 44 countries, and is the platform in which all the Living Labs come together and try to promote what we are doing, so support the EU policies on Living Labs, enhance Living Lab sustainability, and also discuss how we can do our work better, more efficiently, and how we can move this notion of Living Labs forward. So that's all also from my side.
Let's go into the sandboxes or pre-sandboxes experiences we've had from APROVALS. So over to you, Alexis.
Yes, thank you for it's a clear understanding, and we see some connection between the different methodology, which is always interesting and great. So maybe the next slide, David. Yeah, so basically, what I would like to insist on is what APROVALS is and what it is not. And so, as I said, APROVALS is not per se a regulatory sandbox, because in our field there are no authorization for regulatory sandboxes, but a more complete, I would say, focus on how to develop a specific technology in a dedicated space. So basically, what we provide is a tailored journey for the companies so they can de-risk. We have one method, but we have different company-specific pathways, which will allow us to really compare and see exactly what are the difficulties faced by each of the startups. There is I will get then later on specifically the methods and how we do, and I think what's really important in this, the decision logic. Then we have the governance and how we come from company decision to European policy learning. Yes, next slide, please, David. Yes, great. So the idea of this APROVALS is to have in two same space the company pathway and the ecosystem policy insight. So the idea will be to collect either a roadmap for the companies, to collect insights for ecosystems. So I'm talking about the clusters. I'm talking about the biopark, science park, how they can foster and support the technological development, and of course on the policymakers. So the idea is really to be able to frame the decision, then to explore different type of scenarios with the company, to challenge it with the company and with the experts. So to try to find what are the best roadmap to follow for the company in their technological and business development, and then to challenge it to decide, adapt, and pivot, right? Then next slide, please, David. Yes. So how we did, we started with the selection of use case. So we've got 10 companies. In our sector, we don't have much companies. Novel food cell agriculture. So it was quite a challenge, but we managed to have 10 companies because they are kind of struggling in really developing their technology. Then we went to an interview on the audit. So we came from micro, let's say, a diagnostic to understand better what were the challenges and what type of support we can provide them. So we have different modules for that. The module selection, so the companies will select among 15 modules what are the ones that they are the most interested in. And then we implement and we run the methodology where we do different testing and different scenario simulation. Oh, yes. Next slide, please. Yes, perfect. So basically, our modules, I will spare you the details on the cell agriculture, but they are separated in 15 different type of modules. All the modules are initially aligned with the European strategic priorities, and our idea were to really support the companies in some specifics that were aligned with the European priorities to demonstrate that this field and this sector contribute also to the challenges of the European Union as a whole. So we had some modules on the circularity and the supply chain resilience, on the industrial scale up, which is quite important for the companies, is how they can anticipate how to scale up from 10 liters of product to up to several thousand of production. The financing and the investment readiness, because they are struggling into it. Of course, the regulation and the market access, how they can get their product approved. Then it can lead to a specific dedicated sandbox on this. The business model and the consumer societal acceptance, because it's a strong issue, how you can get the people to accept those type of novel food. Yes. So next slide, more on to. So basically what we did is each startup selected 7 modules. 7 modules are structured in four workshops. All the 4 workshops at first, the first workshop is to frame and explore the problematic of the companies. Of course, thanks to the diagnostic, we already have the problem, but then the idea is really to build different scenarios. Then we will, on those scenarios that we have selected, we build a realistic plan for each of them, trying to see which are the ones that are the most likely to happen or not. It's confronted and challenged by the expert. Then we have some time of reflection together with the expert. We reframe and we go to challenge this initial pathway to see how it can be improved, basically. And then we have the results and the policy capture, where from it, what we can gain to disseminate to the Commission and to other relevant policymakers. And really the idea here is that at the end of this process, for each of the modules, you have a roadmap for the company, you have a roadmap for the ecosystem of innovation that support the company, and you have also a white paper for the policymakers. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. I will try to run now. So I would say that there is the decision logic is having critical decision, being able to include different type of external uncertainties. Then we do some assumptions, and then we work on having a pivot or a plan B, as we say in French, to see what could be the most likely to happen. And then I think it will be it. I will not go too much on this, but just as you know, as I said, you have the startup, and it's we reproduce kind of what Despoina or David you described with the quadruple helix, where you have different type of experts from academic, entrepreneurship, policymakers, etc., etc. So the idea is really to aggregate everybody into the sandbox. Yes, please go on. Yeah. So of course it's confidential, but the idea is really to find the balance between everything that is confidential from the companies and being able to be disseminated and help the work. Yeah. And I think it's perfect. Yeah.
I bet this must be a tricky balance between the confidentiality and being able to push for.
Yeah, it is, because in a sense, the companies that we are working with, luckily, they are looking for exposure. So they really want us to disseminate what they are struggling to, because it's a field that just emerged. But on the other hand, they have competitors, of course, and their process products can be kind of, and we go into sensitive data. So it's the right balance to find, and as you said, it's kind of a struggle. Yeah.
Very interesting. We've reached the Q&A time, so I don't know if anyone has specific questions on the presentation. I'm gonna take the liberty actually to share one survey that we are passing to those attendants that join some of the events for the FINEX. In case you have a minute to fill it, would be much appreciated. But please feel free to either voice over or text any questions you may have in the chat. I see. Can we receive the presentation? Yeah, I assume that you will receive it from the spinner. Yeah. If not, meanwhile, I actually had one question regarding above to care. I think it was these checks of 5K, because I think it's a very interesting way of keeping the innovators' attention when sometimes they are super busy with everything else. We experienced that we were struggling to make sure that those matchmaking collaborations were keeping up, and we didn't have that benefit. And some innovators mentioned that as a best practice from other programs. Was that something that was provided as part of the budget? Was it something as part of the European Union? Was there a cap? How did it work at the beginning, at the end? Just, I would be curious to learn more about that.
I can start, and then my colleagues can mention anything that they would like to. So it was something that we have planned in our budget. So before the submission, we have planned for this 5K to be distributed. But it's important to mention that the innovators did not get any direct money. So they get services that costed that amount of money, and the 5K vouchers, let's call it, went to the living labs. So the living labs were assigned with the responsibility to provide 5K of services that the innovators were requesting. And we saw that even without getting any money, there was a lot of requests. So 44 companies requesting services. Of course, we cannot cover any request because it was also the limit of what we can provide was there was a limit there. So it was very important to balance also that how to keep up the expectations, but also offer what we can offer in like a way that is effective and efficient.
Can I just jump in here for 1 second as well? I'm Adrian. I'm with Anthology Ventures. We're part of the Evolve to Care project, and we're also coordinating a clean tech, climate tech, let's say, project that just began last year. So after Evolve to Care was going, and we did not have a budget for any kind of vouchers, but it's somewhat similar to David, to the one that you guys are running as well, to FINEX, I think. I think with the Evolve to Care project, as Desmond has said, having that extra little monetary, or let's say a monetized value of something, it does help in the attractive and to attract people. I've worked in other projects where we've given away up to, with FSTP, where there's been as much as 100,000 on the offer. And no matter what, it's very difficult to attract really high quality innovators, let's say. But I think if there's a way to build that into a proposal, into the design of a project, it can make the difference between, attracting a sufficient number and not. It's definitely a good tool to use. Obviously, it takes money out of the project, and with Evolve to Care, we needed to balance, because there was no FSTP in the call, and so having that as more of a service voucher, it was a way to satisfy the needs of the call, and also compensate the living labs as well, because Enol is the partner in the project, but the individual living labs are the ones that are actually providing the services. And we can't expect, 15 different living labs to provide their services for free. So it was, it was a sort of a win-win situation, I think, for the innovators. But definitely that's a kind of a pain point that's true in a lot of different sectors as well.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
If I can jump in also, I think from Adrian's remark, monetize is important through venture, but also to show that your work has some value. And so when, for instance, we do not have in APROVALS any venture, but we provide high expertise, outside expertise that we pay, subcontracted, and it's important that the companies that are part of the program are aware of that, because they will be way more involved in the program by itself. Because if they are just considering that this program has to be because it's a European project and it will continue because it's funded, but at the end, when you are paying people from the outside, you need to be present at the meetings. You need to work on the documentation that we have been proposing you. So yeah, I agree. So it's in both ways. It's giving you money, but showing that what we bring you worth something also.
And just one last thing on that. It's always tricky in the beginning because there's the question of supply, matching the right supply and demand. So the same thing I'm sure we've all had with mentors and everything, where if you don't know who you're getting on the demand side, it's hard to know who to lock in on the supply side. And so with our living labs, even though we had a very strong focus on transitional care and health and well-being, with the project, we weren't certain that we could get those innovators, those startups to come in. And so, the matching had to happen after we had the pool of startups. It got a little bit tricky, but yeah, I agree both, Alex, with what you said and David with your dilemma there. So we keep trying.
Yes. Yeah, maybe one good example we saw on that was the case of the Antwerp ecosystem, a chemistry ecosystem in Belgium, where they actually support, so similar to what you did, but instead of taking it from the budget, is the actual city council that provides support and pays for furnishing some of those labs. So same approach, not giving away the money, but rather showing the price of what they are getting to the innovators. And it's one of the leading examples that we also feature in our report. So I think that everyone's trying to find a way around it in different ways and engaging different stakeholders, but it's a pain point across industries. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to mention that the European Commission expects to see, as I get from what our PO said, these outcomes actually, and this collaboration among the three projects. This is why it's so important. So it will be really nice to find these common pain points that we have and maybe showcase some solutions on what we have done and propose what the European Commission can do for the next projects to come.
I think that's going to be really important to working. The more that AI penetrates the work flow, let's say, it's really lowering the barriers to innovation in a lot of ways, and it's also kind of making redundant much of the services that we're used to providing and that have been needed up until now. But at least in our experience, we've seen that the real, I would say one of the takeaways of Evolve to Care is that the sort of human in the loop of the living labs that they can offer has been something that is, and I think for quite some time now will maintain a tangible value for innovators. So, as to the degree that you both are providing those same kinds of services, really, whether it's with hardware or other kinds of experimentation services, I think that is something going forward that we will continue to need, whereas some of the other classic services, maybe not so much. But I think the Living Labs played a very, very strong role in the project because they do bring such a depth of, at least from our perspective, a depth of kind of real world, high touch value.
Absolutely. I'm not too sure if there's any question left to answer. I'm also aware of the time and that we are about to hit the limit that we had set. So maybe being aware of the time and respectful for everyone, we can maybe leave it here. If there are other questions, feel free to reach out. I send the survey, I think, and yeah, the spinner will share also the presentation. So thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you to the great speakers and contributors to the call. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you very much. Just on
Yeah,
on the next stage, maybe to understand better what could be done is, I think the logic would be maybe to try to see if there is a complete pathway, because what you demonstrated, David, is that you have the test bed, then you have the living lab, or the living lab and the test bed, I'm sorry, and then you can have the sandbox, right? So I think if we need to reach out to goal between our three projects, and what the explainer was saying is that we need to show that there is this classic pathway that can be done for innovators, right? And there is a continuation. But the question is, where are the gaps between switching from one to another, right? What do you need? Which stage? What requires this switch from another? How we complement each other? So it's kind of here that we need to discuss further to understand better. Of course, where are the gaps? You were mentioning at the end the AI, so kind of the traditional or classic supporting is maybe in motion, let's say. But then we have also our interconnection between our different stage, which is quite important to maybe demonstrate to the commission how we do those bridges. And yeah, could be maybe the main research question that we can try to answer together, I think.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Even if it's not the same fields, we are not in the same sector, it's different. But in a way, when you are an innovator from the beginning of the creation of your company, you start to think normally, what are the different stage, and what should I take? How should I anticipate? And I know that, for instance, APROVALS, we do it from TRL 6, 7, right? And try to anticipate for the next year. But you do it earlier. And I think this is quite useful to have this common pathway vision on this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to take it offline and see where we can put together some thoughts and structure some of these nice takeaways and insights we've discussed.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Thank
Then
you.
I guess thanks everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, bye.
Take care.